We're going to look at adjusting and changing the belts on an ALLETT C34. You need to adjust the belts on the C34 for the drive to the cylinder or the cartridges that are fitted in there if you're not able to transmit enough power. You may notice that the speed of the cylinder is inconsistent or the quality of cut is failing. You may even find that the discharges of the grass clippings or thatch that you're collecting are not going well into the grass box because the speed of the cylinder is reduced. So we're going to take a look at adjusting the V-belt tension, and we're also going to look at how you would change a set of belts as well. So the drive to the cylinder is through this lever here, and the first thing we're going to have to do is get access into this guard. We're going to use a 13mm spanner just to remove So now the guard is removed, I can see how the tensioning system works. By engaging the lever here, the belts go from completely clear of the pulleys and not driving to applying the tension to the V-belts so that the engine drive pulley here will turn the cylinder driven pulley down here. And we can adjust the tension on that in several places. If we look at removing the V-belts first, I need a 10mm spanner, and I'm just going to remove these studs. There is a brake system here that brakes the V-belts so that they don't rotate once the drive is disengaged, and I need to just slacken off this brake. And that gives clearance then for the V-belts to be removed. And then I can quite simply remove the V-belts . Like so. Once the V-belts are removed, then I'm free to inspect them to check that there's no splits, that they're not overly worn and sit too deeply into the V-belt groove. And if I choose to replace them, what I must do is I must make sure that I'm getting 3 belts of the same length. Manufacturing of V-belts is quite tricky, and the manufacturers do put batch numbers onto these belts so that you know that they've all come from the same batch, and then they are most likely to be all of exactly the same length. If they're not of exactly the same length, then the shortest belt does all the driving and the longest belt does no work at all. To replace the V-belts, you just need to thread this through in this way. On this top pulley, make sure that they're going either side of the 2 points here. Make sure you get the belts in the correct order, 1, 2, 3, and that the brake needs to go over the top here. And then we're free to put 1 belt on at a time on the bottom pulley. Once we've made sure that the path of the pulleys are correct, as you can see here, then we can put the lower guard back on again. The purpose of this is to retain the V-belts against the pulley so that when, as it is at the moment, there is no tension on the belts, that they don't come free or come out of their grooves. So this needs to fit quite closely, but it doesn't need to touch the belts or the pulley when it's in its driving position. $10mm spanner again. I'm just going to tighten these up so they're nearly tight, and then I can just check that I have clearance of the V-belts when they're fully in their groove, and I can just put my eye down there and make sure that's the case. Secondly, the brake bar here just needs to be clear of the belts when it's in its working position. So when I put the belt into full tension, then I just need to make sure that I locate this in a position where it's about 2 to 3mm clear of the V-belts. That clearance is checked here when the belts are tight. When I release the tension, I will see that the brake will engage with the back of the belt, and this will make sure that everything stops turning. So if I've decided that I need to increase the belt tension because I'm not getting the drive to the reel as I would want, then I'm going to measure the tension literally by holding my finger on here and pressing it back against here, and I can quite easily make that touch. That tension there needs slightly increasing, and I have another way of doing it. I can take some verniers and measure the flat to flat of this spring here, which should be in the region of 60 to 65mm in order to give enough tension on the drive. So to increase the tension on the drive, what I need to do is to change the length of the outer on this Bowden cable. I need two 17mm spanners, and then what I'm going to do is just tighten up the lower one and slacken off the top one, and this will increase the tension on the spring but also on the belts. So when I now increase the tension, I can feel that I've got extra force on those V-belts, and when I measure the spring tension here, that I've now increased that as well. So once we're happy with the tension, we just need to check the inside of the guard is clean, there's no other debris in the unit, and we can replace the guard. It locates on these two, with these two holes. And replace the two 13mm Make sure that the nylock engages so that the guard remains secure. And that's complete.